This is a quick demonstration to highlight the basic forms functionality that we've implemented. Just a note, so Backbase have the forms product. The forms product allow us to create entity models, map it to our data in the background, and then create a visualization using the forms runtime. The forms implementation I'm going to show you now is something completely different. This is a quick and easy way for creating forms within the Backbase portal using the standard concepts of containers and widgets. I'll do this demonstration using the Universal Edition portal, but this can be done on any blank portal implementation. So here in my Universal Editions portal, I have a page, which is my forms page. Now, what you'll see here is that this portal edition uses PubSub for error handling and success handlings. You'll see whenever an error occurs, it is then displayed in the portal. So whenever an error occurs, and what I'm going to show you next, the messaging is broadcasted using PubSub, and thus then it displays it automatically in the portal. Now at the bottom here, you'll see there is an option called Forms. To create a form, I will first drag the form container onto my page, and I can decide where to place it. This is a standard Backbase layout with the standard layout properties. The properties I have is, for example, what style I would like to give each page in my form. I can also decide the number of pages I want, 1 or 2 or 3 pages, 4, there's no limit. I can then decide whether I would like to show the breadcrumb at the bottom, so the pagination, or whether I would like to see a progress bar. Now the progress bar will start from 0 by default and then go to, of course, 100%. If you do specify that the last page is a thank you page, then it starts with calculating that the first page is already completed, so that when you reach the thank you page, that the progress bar is set to 100% already, and not to, for example, in this case, 66% because it's 3 pages. So if I save this, so now I have my form. You will see that my form has now the page options, and I can page between the different pages here if I want to, progress bar active as well. The next thing you want to do is then add items to the form. Typically, I will start by adding my navigation between the form elements. I might not display pagination because pagination allows you to switch between pages directly, and you might want to enforce pagination with the next previous button instead, so that people fill in data values. To add the buttons, you will see there is different options here on the forms, a button option. But before I add the button, I might want to put the button in a control or another layout. So in this scenario, I'm just going to add the button directly. You see I have my page area which has a drop zone. I can just add the button. Now a button has settings, it's a standard widget. I can give the button a textual name, and let's call this my next button. And there is 3 different button options in this version, where I can say this is the next page, which will trigger the next page event. You can associate a CSS class with this widget. We currently use Bootstrap, so you can just use Bootstrap classes, but if you have your own class names, you can just define it here. You can override the width of the widget, alignment of how it should be displayed, and then there's the action URL. The action URL is where the data should be submitted in case we want to submit on the button action. And then there is, of course, also a success page index. So once you do submit data and it's successful, where you should be navigated next. So if I'm on page 2, take me to page 1 again, if I'm successful, etc. So for now, this is just my normal next button. On my second page, I would also like to have buttons at previous and a next, but because it is 2 buttons, I'm going to embed it in another layout. I'm just going to select here one of the other product layouts, which allow me to split the page in 2, and then I'm going to add the buttons. I'm first going to add on the left-hand side the previous button, and on the right-hand side a next button. So let's quickly configure these buttons. So this will also say next, and this will go to the next page, and then here I don't have any submit of data, and we'll say save this, and this one will say previous, so I will edit this, and this will say previous value. And this will go to previous page, and also don't have submission of data, like this. Now a button can at any point go to the next page, like I have here. So I click next, it goes to the next page. If we go previous, it will go to the previous page, next to the next page again, etc. But you can also, as I say, have submit buttons navigate in between the pages. So what if on page 2 I would like this not to be next but submit the data, and once the data is successfully submitted, only then go to page 3. So you can have as many submissions or submit buttons in a page as you want to. So let's say this is send information, and this will be of type submit data, and then we can fill in the URL where the data should be submitted to. Now we provide out of this implementation 2 pipes to where you can submit data, but you can submit the data anywhere you want to. You can directly send it to a web service. For the implementation, we use the out-of-the-box PTC implementation options, and I'm just going to submit the data to this PTC pipe called form basic submit. I'll save it. One of the things I also noticed is I would like my previous button to be left aligned, so you can also just change the alignment or change it to left here. On my 3rd page, I might want to do another submit, as I said. So let's add a button here on my 3rd page, and we'll call this one email a friend. So in this case, data has successfully ended up on the server, and now I might want to email a friend and tell them a little bit of information. So I'm going to use that other pipe I've explained earlier. So instead of submit, I'll use the one that has an email. So what it does, it collects all the form data that we've set up and then sends it to an email. So simple. Right now I have on my forms page, if I go to the page, you'll see I start on my 1st page. I can click next, takes me to previous or send information. When it sends the information and it is successful, it will then go to the 3rd page, and then I can email my friend. So what you notice here is if I email friend, because there is no next page to navigate to, it simply broadcasts that there was an error or successful submission of the data, and then it's displayed here. So I'm going to change this back to just a normal data submission, so you can always change where the data should go to, and just do this as a submit as well. Save. In this case, if I now click it, you'll see that it will then say the data was successfully committed, and I can then go forth. So the next step we want to do is now start adding fields to our form. And this is what you also see here at the bottom. We have different field options. You can add a list, or you can add a summary field, or a field itself. So let's look at the field widget itself. The field widget allows me to enter a label and then select the value. So let's do the first one. I'll say enter first name. There we go. It's required. Save. Let's add another one below it. So I'll add one here. I will say this is my last name or surname. And this will not be required, for example. Save it. Let's add another field. This time, let's do some extra options. I will say, for example, this is my income. Now, when I say income, I might want to say, what do I mean with this? I give the field a hint. So enter income value here. Now, there's also other options for styling. You can see I have a prefix value and a suffix value. I said because I know that the income will most likely be a dollar value, I can already add the $sign here, which allow me then to prefix the field with the $sign itself. If I scroll further down, you'll see I have more options where I can give it a custom CSS class. I can also decide how a field should be styled. Should it be inline where the label is displayed above the field, horizontal where the label is displayed on the left, or just a basic field with no styling. I can also select validation. I can say I would like this to be a currency. So it will validate that whenever I fill in the data, that it has a currency value entered. And I can then say, well, what is the error message if the client-side validation failed? Invalid amount entered. I can also give it a default value. I'm not going to give it a default value. You can give a value by hard-coding the value, or you can bind, like we do with the submit, to a URL, which can be, again, a web service or a PTC pipe, which can get the default value for us, so pre-populate the field. I can also do validation. So once the user has entered the value, instead of doing client-side JavaScript validation, I can send the data to the server and do the validation on the server. So right here, you see I have my prefix, which is the $sign, and I have my income in here. Let's add one more field. Let's say I would like to add my credit card number. So this is just another example. So let's call this credit card number. I'm not going to give a hint, no prefix, and CSS, inline. I'm going to say, well, this is a number for client-side validation, so invalid credit card number, enter. I'm not going to give it a default value. I have no data binding for it, but I do want to give it some validation. The validation here is, again, as I said, just calling a PTC pipe. We have a sample pipe here which does type credit card, which validates that the credit card number is entered correctly. So I have a simple page so far. I have first name, surname, income, credit card number. Let's also add a list. So let's say I would like to add a list here in between. This time it's a different kind of set of options. I have a list name like before, but I have different list options. A list option which can be a list box, checkbox, or radio. I can then give it a name, let's say language. I would like to select a language. Select your language. You can also give the list a height, so if it is a multi-select option, for example, a class, again with the styling, and then you can give it a JSON string of values. This will be a hard-coded list of values then. But in case you don't want to hard-code this list of values, you can take out that list options, and you can then say, I would like to get the values from the server itself. And this is what we do. We provide a basic binding option for you, where you can then get data from the server. We give one where it can give you back a single value or a list of values. So here is the language one, and I can then say save. So right now, you see here we have our language with a list, and then we have here first name, surname, language, income, credit card. Let's quickly reload this page. Okay, it appears that it's not finding my list of languages, so let me quickly go look. I think the pipe's name is languages, not just language. So let me just go correct this. Languages, like that. That's better. So there it populates my list of languages. As I said, you can either get values from the server by doing a list, or I can actually get a single value as well. So let's go here to first name. I might want to populate the first name based on the username of the user logged in. Again, I can do a data binding here, so, and this time it will be type username. And click on save, and now I see it populates it with admin. Credit card number, let's give it a hint. Now I know that the server will ask us to fill in a credit card number of 16 digits, so 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is the hint for the credit card number, so that you know at least that you need to fill in these values. Okay, so far so good. So we have our first page filled in. So the user will then say, click on next. So it will take you to the next page. As you can see, if you have the navigator at the bottom, it's also referred to as the breadcrumb or pagination. Field validation is not mandatory. So you have to decide whether you display that or not. If you want to force field validation by the next button, don't display this option at the bottom. But here on this page, I might now want to display a summary of information. The summary is quite easy. You just drag the summary field on. What the summary field does, it will load all the summary information of all the fields that has been filled in already. So in this case, it's blank because we haven't filled in any data. We'll see the effect of this a little bit later. And then on the third page, we want to send this to my friend. So let's add another list here on this third page where I will select my friend's email address. So I'll say, this time I'll give the list a name because I want to say this is the to email. So if you don't give a field a name or a list a name, we will automatically give it a name in the HTML that we generate. We'll say this is mandatory, select information, send image to a friend, correct. Select a friend from the list is the hint, and give it a height. I'm not going to make this a normal list. Let's make this a radio checkbox option. Inline the values, again, I'm not going to hardcode the values. There's no default value here. I'm going to get my options from a basic binding, and the binding I'm going to do this time is contacts. So contacts, like this. Okay, so there I have my default bindings. I don't have any data validation, and it's a list. So there we go. So send, it detects my different contacts. I can then have my list of values here, etc. So let's go look at what this form looks like if I visit this now as a customer. So first of all, it will go to our first page. We'll see that it started 33% because I indicated to the container that we have a thank you page. Otherwise, it would have said 0. I don't need to fill in the first name. And when I'm going to click next, it's going to do the validations already. Now, there's two kinds of validations. Obviously, we have client-side validations and we have server validations. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, show you just the client validation. I'm going to enter here the value 1, which is then a valid amount. 10.00. Let's see if that's a valid amount. There we go. Because this is a currency, we need to supply the .00. Here, this is a credit card where we do validation number. So if we click 1, it now successfully passed the JavaScript validation, but now the server-side validation again triggers. So that means that my client-side validation was successful. It is a number. So if I type A, this is just client validation. If I type 1, this is client successful, but now server validation failed. In which case I need to provide a 16-digit number. So there's 16 numbers. And then I will go next. So now it shows me a summary. As you can see, we added the summary field, and I can then send this information. When I send this information, it will now be sent to the server. The server can read all this information. For the demonstration, I am running Eclipse. You can see here when I submitted it, it submitted all the data for me. Note, however, it only submitted the data until the point where the summary was displayed or where the submit is. It didn't submit this information, which is important because when you submit, it should only submit the forms or the pages that's completed. And of course, if I go to the next page here, now if I say submit and send this, let's say to Hendrik, and I click on submit, it will say your data was successfully sent. There's no next page to go to, so it just broadcast successful. And on the server, we will see now there is a to email sent to my email address with the other fields as before. Okay, so this was a quick demonstration of how I built a very simple form using out-of-the-box Backbase components. There's a lot of nice features built into the software implementation here already. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me.